Hey friends, welcome back to the Big Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Tricia Brouk, founder of the Big Talk Academy, award-winning director, producer, and author, and this is episode 464. This week I am so excited to introduce you to Tom Polland. Tom is the multiple best-selling marketing author for over 37 years with experience in sales and marketing. He also started and managed and sold multiple businesses, including teams of over 100, and he's brought in revenue of more than 20 million bucks. Tom is currently working with clients in 27 cities and 15 time zones around the world and describes himself as voluntarily married, living in a house on the sand next to the blue waves at Little Castaways Beach in Queens Island, Australia. All right, let's drop in with Tom. Tom, I am so excited that you are joining me here today on the Big Talk. And I love that you just had an espresso in a very sweet little cup. How are you?
I'm a box of fluffy ducks, thank you, and all the better for having had my morning shot, my addiction.
Um, Amazing. So share with our listeners, it's morning for you, it's evening for me. Where are you joining me from today, Tom?
I'm in a little place called Wyber Downs, and it's on the Sunshine Coast in Australia. So kind of up the north on the right-hand side, if you're looking at a map of Australia. So it's subtropical. We live in a little private resort next to the lake, and it's paradise. And so I don't get out much.
Amazing. That sounds so awesome. Well, I had the pleasure and privilege of being interviewed by you on Leadsology in 7 delicious minutes.
That's
And
right.
I am so grateful that you are joining us today on the Big Talk podcast. I would love for you to start by taking us into your backstory. Where do you want to go from? And tell us as much or as little as you desire, and what led you to this moment in time with me today, Tom.
Okay, thanks for that. Look, I 40 years ago, that's a fair while ago, I started as a young management consultant, and my biggest challenge was, well, I had a credibility issue because I was very young. I was competing against some larger consulting firms, but I also had a specialty, so that kind of offset it. But the big problem is that I felt like I'm waking up every Monday morning unemployed, and it probably took me a little too long to realize that I had to get very good at lead generation, and especially so as a very young management consultant. Um, and the tactics that work for the big firms, such as billboards and full page, business review ads, etc. A, I couldn't afford them, and B, they didn't work for me in any event, even if I could have afforded them. So I figured out fairly early on that in order to generate leads, I need to offer prospects a first date. That's effectively what it was. That because I didn't have a big brand name, I couldn't just stick an ad in the paper and expect for the phone to ring. Or back then we didn't have emails, but more latterly the email stuff come flowing in. So I stumbled across. I did a lot of marketing courses, read a lot of books, and the long story short is I figured out that events, having an event and inviting prospects to the event. Back in the day, we didn't have multi-level marketing. We didn't have any of that. But so putting on a free event was a pretty novel idea. So we would pack a room with 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 200 prospects, and I'd strut my stuff on the stage for a couple of hours and hand out feedback forms, and that's how we picked up clients. So when I had several businesses over the years, and the last one I sold was 2008. And I had enough of traveling, and I had enough of hiring conference centers and setting up AV gear or having teams to do that. So I got into webinars because I thought I don't have to leave home anymore. I don't have to fly anywhere. I don't have to rent studios and so on. So that's the backstory. It started with a desperate need to figure out how to systematically and predictably generate high quality leads. That led to physical events, of which I ran over 500 globally. And that led into webinars because I'm lazy and I don't want to travel as much. So
I love that.
that's my
Tom,
stick these
talk.
days is lead generation via webinars. That's what I teach.
I love it. And I'd love for you to talk about the systematic approach that you have
Right.
masterfully organized in your book and in the way you teach and on your podcast, the systematic approach to create those webinars that are going to create the lead gen and convert. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Okay, thanks for that. So I'm a words person, and you'll find that the world can be divided basically into words people and numbers people to oversimplify it. I call them cats and dogs. So metaphorically speaking, I'm a dog. I make a lot of noise. I want attention. And so the dogs are a metaphor for the people on the stage, the people that have the ideas, the people that have the vision but often can't execute it or finish it. Never, that saying, never leave an entrepreneur in charge of her own idea or his own idea. And so I've always been keen on having an operations person, a numbers person, someone that can follow me and go, okay, this is what you do routinely and repeatedly. Let's measure those results at every step and let's document them. So today, for example, I have Mike Levin, who's an absolute godsend. He's in Florida. He's kind of like the sergeant major in the army, but he's sometimes a colonel as well. He tracks all the numbers on everything. So when we run an event these days, it's a webinar. He can tell me when the audience interest went down, when it went up. He tracks the consults booked at the end, the sales booked, the lifetime cycle of the lifetime value of a client, and so on. So everything is tracked and measured. And so there's an old saying, prescription without diagnosis is malpractice. And that's what I find happens too often in the marketing world is people jump to conclusions far too quickly before they have any numbers which are statistically significant on which to base a conclusion. They run one event and they go, well, I didn't get any leads, so that sucks. It's a bad idea. Well, maybe you could have done it better, but maybe also one event isn't enough to judge or evaluate a conclusion on. So I've always been keen on tracking the numbers. One source of reality, as I call it, one source of reality, which is, let's have a look at what the numbers say. Over a period of time, numbers don't lie. So, for example, we've tested starting events at 3 p.m. Eastern on a Wednesday, 4 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. And every hour we go later, we lose 3% in terms of attendance show up. So things like that, and that's over 3,000 registrants. So things like that, that's what we track it all. But everything is then documented, and we have a team of people in the Philippines that just follow systems. One very senior person there who runs the show over there. So slowly over a period of time, going from one VA at 5 hours a week, we've built up as the revenue flows have increased, and we've got more reliable and more predictable in terms of our systems. We've got better at it, and we just keep refining those systems. So it's the big thing was missing so much from my management consulting career early on, is that predictability, the ability to be able to plan ahead. And some people find the routine of this boring, but I don't. It's the cats want to follow a routine. They want to join the dots. Our wonderful Filipino team want to wake up in the morning and they know what has to be done, when it has to be done, how it has to be done, and they know they've done the job well, and they know they're going to get a bonus for that. It's some of the roles are the digital equivalent of flipping burgers that make McDonald's. The bell goes off, ding, flip the burger, and some of them require more intellect. But it's a system. The whole organization is just this relentless system that produces high quality new client inquiries.
All right. So the system is producing high quality new clients, and that means you can serve more. Let's go back a little bit and talk about
Okay.
the webinar. Is it a free webinar? And what's your strategy around that?
Right. Yes, it's free. Otherwise, it's kind of like the metaphor of a first date is a pretty good one. We want audience members to have this experience of leadsology without too much skin in the game. We don't want to say to them straight off the bat, "Will you marry me?" We're going to invite them out on a first date, and we're paying. Then the webinar is perfect because of that, because it doesn't ask for too much skin in the game, but it's enough. It's an hour and a half of someone's time. If they turn up to that, they have a serious interest in your specialty. So it's free for that reason, because the skin in the game is not money; it's time. And we also want to collect the email addresses of those people who aren't quite ready or motivated enough yet to show up, but have an interest, because they might be motivated in 2 months or 3 months' time. So if you charge for it, you will get a lot less people. They will be more serious, of course, but you've got to go back to your overarching strategy. And our email list is our gold mine. We can touch on why, but it's nothing to do with selling my products to it, funnily enough. So it's free, but it's also live because it's only once a month. I run the webinar one day a month, and we have multiple joint venture partners promote the webinar without fees, without paying affiliate commissions. And so that's where the audience come from. It's one webinar a month. I think last month we had 9 or 10 partners promote it. So we get a fresh audience every single month. I just strap my stuff on the digital stage like I used to do on the physical stage. And at the end, we offer folks a consult. There's a filtering system. They know what our fees are. They have to agree by checking a box that they've got our fees in their budget, that they're ready to start, that they're also ready to make a decision at that meeting if they get all the questions answered. And so they have to agree to the terms and conditions of the meeting, which is also free, other than the time they invest. So audiences are supplied by other people's networks. We have a certain sequence that we lead people through on the webinars, not an infomercial sequence, but it's quite educational and value added, because we want to create a lasting impression in the brains of the people that don't sign up, that that brand is something that should be valued. So that's kind of the sequence. If that gives you the big picture. It's not evergreen because it's kind of like, going on a first date and having a robot sitting there in your place. How serious is this person about a relationship?
Right.
And it's only once a month, so it's no big deal for me.
And let's talk about what it means to strut your stuff on that stage.
Right. Well, it's the let's have a look at what the webinar is, and it's actually positioned as a demonstration of how I work with my clients to generate leads and generate a predictable flow of high quality inbound new client inquiries in around 1 hour a month. That's the title, but it's preceded by the word demonstration, not training webinar or free whatever. So, and that's important because it is a demonstration. There is going to be an offer at the end. It's, yes, you're going to get training, and no, we're not going to charge for it, but it's not going to be this bait and switch thing where you think, oh, it's something for free, and suddenly there's a half hour of sales pitch or something, which we don't do anyway. So the sequence always starts with the title, and if you don't get the title right, you don't get cut through, and amongst all the clutter and emails that the people are getting every day, it doesn't jump out of them. And if they do notice it, it's going to motivate them to click that link and go ahead and register. So the title is the whole formula and system around putting the title together. And we start by who this is for, and we have an agenda, and the agenda is milestones. So people, when they're sitting through the event, can see the sequence that we're moving through. They know how far we've got to go to the end. They know where they are in the sequence. So they have a lot of certainty around progression. That's quite important. But we start with the promise, and the promise is one slide that uses an NLP technique, neuro-linguistic programming, to create a picture in their brain. And that picture stimulates chemicals, which are the chemicals they want to feel. So ours is, and the promise is about the transformation. I'm going to share with you our system that we work with our clients to put in place. You'll probably need our help to do it if you want it, but for those of you who can't afford it, let's get you started and show you what it's all about. So the promise is the transformation of what happens when you put the stuff in place. It's the after picture of a weight loss before and after picture. It's just the after picture. So, and our promise is you wake up on a Monday morning and you open up your calendar and you feel a smile spread across your face as you see bookings from highly qualified prospects who've reached out to book a time to talk with you about becoming a client. And
Amazing. I'm going to pause you there for a second. I
sure.
love this. And I want you to speak to the moral and ethics behind the strategy of marketing in service and of service. This is something that I think people get confused around. The slide is an NLP slide. It's meant to inspire and it's meant to do all these things, but that is not manipulation. And that's really important for us to talk about, because it's the same thing in speaking. When I want my speakers to use the technique of objective and action, it is not manipulation, it is motivation. So talk to that a little bit, Tom.
Well, for me, it's quite hard to. It's a really great question. What's the difference between influence and manipulation? And to me, it's the intent behind the method or the technique. And this, I'm a great believer in karma. You reap what you sow, if you like. And I don't know if it's true, but I believe in it because I think it makes the world a better place if I act as if it is true. And karma has to do with intention. And if you intend to help people and you intend to do the right thing by the most people, then theoretically you get good karma. So when we use an NLP technique to help people see a picture of opening up, and I even mentioned, whether it's iCal or Outlook or GCal, I want them to see the calendar in their brain And I
Right.
talk about these appointments popping up in their calendar, and you feel a smile go across your face as you see. So we're creating a picture, and that picture stimulates the words, create the picture. The picture simulates the chemicals, which people feel, that feels good. I want more of that, you know. So to me, my intention is to carefully filter the people that we can help. That's the intention. And I want to do that in a non-manipulative feeling way. And some people will put a label of manipulation on it. Some people put a label of ethical influencing on it. I don't mind. I know when I look at myself in the mirror that we routinely say to people, no, I'm sorry, we can't help you. So we don't just try and flog them a program and take their money and go, oh, too bad, you didn't make it work. Because it comes back to karma. So what's my intention behind this technique? And the other thing I'll add in regard to manipulation versus influence is marketing is putting an offer in front of people that we're pretty sure are already looking for that offer. Where selling can be trying to convince people this is an offer they should be interested in. So marketing can certainly be manipulative, and so can selling. But all I'm interested in, because the title is the thing that magnetically attracts the right people, I'm just interested in having the people on there that I can help, obviously, because otherwise I'm wasting their time as well as my time.
Absolutely. And that's why I wanted to highlight that, Tom, because I know that about you. And I wanted to just make sure our audience and listeners can hear from you that the intention, and the way that you are serving through this
Yeah,
webinar is just so thoughtful. And I wanted to just name that and call that out.
thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Keep going with the process that you take us through.
All right. I call it a persuasion sequence. So we've started with a title, which has attracted the right people. Well, mostly so. We've gone into there was a clear agenda, which is milestone, which we keep referring back to as we go through, so people can see the progress. Then we go into the promise. So that's the thing which is going to tap dance on the unconscious buying motivations of the right people. And then we go into why listen to me. So that's where you can tell your backstory, you can tell about client testimonials, you can show screenshots of shopping cart results or whatever you want to do. But it's a fair question. And it doesn't matter how many best-selling books you've written. It doesn't matter how if you've got this big brand global name, people are still going to probably quite rightly sit back in the audience and be a little skeptical and go, I don't know. I don't know this person yet. We're still early in our first date. We haven't even had a first glass of wine. I don't know. I'm checking this person out, right? So let's speak to that elephant in the room. Do I know what I'm talking about? Of the 8 objectives that I'm trying to achieve in a webinar, the most important one is to convince and have audience members believe that I can deliver on the promise in the title, which is around the generation of a predictable flow of high quality inbound new client inquiries every week of the year. So that's the number one objective. And so I want to meet that head on straight up front. And if you don't have a lot of client testimonials, you can use your backstory. How did you get into this? And you can also use a typical before and after client scenario. And you can say, this is not a client, but I want to give you what this should look like if you started with me as a client or a typical person, what it looks like before. My office was a mess and now it's efficient and tidy, or I used to work 6 days a week and now I only have to work 4, or I used to be 400 pounds and now I'm only 100, or whatever it happens to be, the typical before and after scenario. But that's all in why listen to me. And then we go into what's called the 3 principles, and we haven't even started on how it all works yet. That comes next. For example, I use a principle called "You're not Hugh Jackman," and I said this is one of the principles I want to share with you, and it's a principle behind the all effective marketing of all services and advice, not products. So if you're in a service-based industry, you're a coach or consultant, this is important to you. And I'll explain why most of your marketing efforts don't work. And I tell the story of me asking my wife who she thought the world's most irresistible man was, and she said Hugh Jackman. And I said, well, what if there was a knock on the front door right now and you went and answered it and it was Hugh Jackman and he asked you to marry him? What would you do? And she said, she thought about it for a moment and she said, well, I know you, I love you, right, Tom? And I said, yeah, but I think I know what you're going to say. She said, you can't do it. She said, I'm sorry. I'd run away with the guy. I mean, it's Hugh Jackman, but I still love you. And I said, look, you don't have to apologize. She was a little surprised. She said, well, I just told you I was going to run away with another man if I could. Well, you've got to be upset. I said, yeah, but it's Hugh Jackman. I mean, if he proposed to me, I'd run away, and I'm not even gay. It's Hugh freaking Jackman. And the story explains that Hugh Jackman could get away with that, but most of us, if we were wanting to propose marriage, would have to have a few dates first.
Right.
And how important it is that our prospects get the experience of a relationship with us before we propose. They book a consult or they sign up as a client and so on. So it's a principle that kind of sits people in the dark and goes, what is he talking about? You're not Hugh Jackman. I know I'm not Hugh Jackman. And then I tell a story and the light bulb goes on. I go, that's why I can't just put an advertisement in a newspaper and have the phone ringing, because it's not a set of golf clubs or it's not a car that's half price. And after that, by that point, we've got people where they're going, okay, I'm sold. This looks amazing. You've explained what it is, what the benefit is. You've given me evidence of the fact that it works well. You've explained why it works, and now what the heck? How does it all work? And that's when we go into the demonstration part of the persuasion sequence, and we always present how you work with your clients in only 3 parts. There are 3 parts to the model, and it doesn't matter if there's 51 parts, we boil them down to 3, because people will be able to follow 3 parts. They can't follow 6 or 7. And the enemy of motivation is complication. So we oversimplify things, and then we finish with call to action, which typically includes a reason for people to book a consult now rather than wait for a few days. And that's
Right.
the sequence.
Amazing. You're so clear in how you communicate and using your voice. At what point did you realize that your voice was so connected and um, connected and enlightened when it comes to marketing?
I'm not sure if I ever got to that point. And when you say voice, are you referring to the sort of the spiritual voice or the physical voice, if you like?
Oh, great question. I would say both.
Right,
Yes, you're very articulate. You've got a very clear speaking voice, but I'm more like the ability to show yourself in this way through
right,
speaking, through
okay.
your voice.
Well, damaging admission, as copywriters call it. I tried cringeworthy techniques that I paid money for, and people told me you should do this. You should stack up the bonuses, and you should tell them that the world will end before midnight if they don't pull their credit card out. And frankly, in 2007 or 2008, I hit a rough patch financially, and I thought, my God, I've got to get some money, and otherwise we're going to lose houses and not feed people and so on. And when you're desperate, it's very tempting to be seduced by what I would now look back and say, well, that was a manipulative technique. I my integrity had slipped to some extent. And there was nothing extreme. It was just stuff that was on the fringe of what I was comfortable with.
Mm,
And you end up with clients that just aren't quite a fit, and you end up going to meetings and you're not looking forward to them. And then a client finishes up and you think, oh, thank God for that. That was hard work. And then you have other meetings where you think, my God, I love this with this client. So I think that was the crossover point for me around 2007, 2008, 2009, where I went to, I found that I would sleep better at night, that I was actually attracting clients who were a better fit. I wouldn't say the marketing suddenly flowed miraculously, but I guess I got to the point where I had paid so many people so much money for how it was meant to all work, and it hadn't worked, and I didn't feel comfortable with it, that in the end I unsubscribed from every email list. I stopped going to conferences. I stopped reading books. I literally put myself in a digital, not literally, metaphorically speaking, in a digital cave, and thought, right, I'm going to use what I've learned worked well with marketing, but I'm going to do it my way, and let's see what happens.
mm.
And surprisingly, it worked incredibly well. So I'm, still learning, still growing, but I think that experience of going to the fringe of what I was comfortable with and feeling uncomfortable about the techniques I was using, and then coming back to what I did feel good about. I think that experience has given me confidence to use my own voice, so to speak.
Amazing. You truly are an influential voice, Tom.
Oh, shucks, thank you, ma'am. You got
You're
nice hair.
welcome. Oh, thanks. Thanks so much.
Yeah, and that's in addition to being an influential voice. Yeah.
Oh my
Anywho,
goodness. Let's talk about how cool you are that you make your own honey and that you're a beekeeper.
how did you know that?
I
Yeah,
did my research.
you sure did. Wow. Those drones are amazing things, aren't they? They hover over a house in Australia. We have four Australian stingless beehives, and now Australian stingless bee is about a quarter of the size of your standard honeybee, and it takes them a year to produce a kilo of honey, whereas a typical beehive will do that in 6 to 12 weeks, depending on what it is. So we have these, yeah, and I wouldn't say I'm much of a beehive manager because you just set them and forget them, and every year you go in and open it up and take out a kilo of honey. So, but the honey is incredibly intense in its flavor, and it has a lot more medicinal properties and so on. So, very special little bee, Australian stingless bees, and they don't sting, but I can tell you from first-hand experience, they do bite.
Wow, that's so amazing. Well, I'm so thrilled that you have this contribution to the planet by having bees, in addition to the contribution you have to the world by teaching people how to create amazing leads. And another thing that I know about you is that you spoke about your wife saying, I would have to leave you for Hugh Jackman, but you also are known locally as Kiwi and the Kraut. Talk
Right.
to our listeners a little bit about your wife
Well,
and why that is.
I'm actually a New Zealander, so I moved to Australia to get more sunshine. It's kind of like moving from Canada to the US, I suppose. It's a bigger country, but in this case, it's also a much sunnier country. And New Zealand, beautiful country though it is, the winters were just too long for me, and I suffered from seasonal affective disorder. So I'm a
Mhm.
Kiwi living in Australia, and that's where I met my wife, who is a German from Germany.
A German
So
from Germany, that makes perfect sense.
she's the crowd. Yeah, how unusual. She's the crowd, and I'm the Kiwi. And as a reminder, I'm one of only 4 million, and she's one of 80 million. So I'm more special than Hugh Jackman.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Well, I love that you have this ability to touch so many lives and that you have a global company and that you are using your voice for good. I really appreciate that about you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You ready for some fast talk?
I'm ready for some fast talk.
All right. Tom, what's your favorite book?
80/20 Principle, Richard Koch, Koch. It's a life changing book, both in business and personal life. Get it, do the exercises in it. It is pure magic.
I love that book too. Amazing. Who's your favorite speaker and why?
Dan Kennedy, not because I follow his marketing methods to the T, but he's extraordinarily entertaining. He puts incredible detail into his talks. They always appear to be fresh and original, and I never walk away from Dan Kennedy's talks without an idea that's absolute gold.
Awesome. How do you memorize if you do when you're speaking?
That's a very, very good point. I practice a lot. If I've got new stuff, I practice, I practice, I practice, I practice. My very first public speech I did, I literally went through it 21 times because someone said if you do a thing 21 times, it's in your brain. So it was a 1 hour talk. I didn't use any notes, so I just practice a heck of a lot because my memory is actually really poor.
It's what you have to do. You have to rehearse. All right,
Right.
Tom, what do you do the day before you speak, whether it's on a stage, on a podcast, or in a virtual space?
Look, I always make sure I get plenty of sleep. That's the biggest thing I do. So I'm fresh. A lot of my talks are done early morning my time because it's a North American market and time zones are a bit different. That's the only thing I do that's special. I don't drink alcohol anyway, so I don't have to lay off on that. I gave that up a few years ago and I realized I was drinking a bit too much. Oops. uh, so for me, it's just the sleep. That's the biggest thing. I want to wake up and have my energy tanks full.
Amazing. And what podcast are you currently obsessed with?
Another damaging mission. I don't listen to podcasts at all, even though I have a show and I appear on them. I don't have one. I struck out. Sorry on that last question.
No worries. You are doing life and making honey.
Yeah, honey. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for being a guest today on the Big Talk podcast. Tom, where can our listeners get in touch with you? And I think you have a special gift for us.
Yeah, look, I think First of all, Tom at leadsology.guru is my email address. I always intend to respond to every single email, Tom at leadsology.guru. The special gift, I think the best thing people can do is go to get Tom's free book. There's a book that's a bestseller on Amazon. This edition is available at gettomsfreebook.com. Also, once you get the book, you'll read about a link which you can download our persuasion sequence, our set of templated slides to walk through. You'll be able to register for one of our webinars, which we run every month. So gettomsfreebook.com is probably the best place to go and get that free gift.
Amazing. And we will put all of this in the show notes, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on the Big Talk podcast today. We so appreciate your time and your attention. And remember, your voice matters. Big love, everybody.